half the Star Talk staff with us, out to Stonehenge, and in the middle of the night, spontaneously decided to do that.
Scientists found a pattern at Stonehenge, and it was not made for human eyes outside the circle. The internet is blowing up. In early 2025, researchers published data showing a sound frequency pattern inside Stonehenge that nobody on the outside could hear. The stones create an acoustic chamber that amplifies voices by 4 decibels, but only if you stand inside the circle. Step 1 meter outside, and the sound dies. Scientists are scrambling to explain how Stone Age people 5,000 years ago built a structure that functions like a movie theater for sound when they never had theaters or even basic tools. But here is the kicker. The pattern gets darker.
Because, quite frankly, what's recently been announced regarding this one rock changes everything we thought we knew about the capabilities of Neolithic people, suggesting they were far more advanced and interconnected than we could have ever imagined.
What most people do not realize is that Stonehenge was designed using mathematical formulas that would not be discovered for another 2,000 years. Researchers confirmed in late 2024 that the monument uses Pythagorean geometry. Pythagoras lived around 500 BC. Stonehenge was built in 2500 BC. The builders encoded the value of pi as 3.1304 into the stone circle dimensions. They used Pythagorean triangles with 5:12:13 ratios to position the massive stones. Mainstream archaeology told us these were primitive farmers who dragged rocks. The new evidence says they were engineers with knowledge that rivals modern architects. And get this. The 6-ton altar stone at the center of Stonehenge came from Scotland, not Wales like textbooks claimed for over 100 years. In August 2024, scientists published proof in the journal Nature that the altar stone traveled 750 kilometers from northeast Scotland to southern England. This was 5,000 years ago. Britain did not have the wheel yet. Researchers calculated the odds of moving a 6-ton sandstone block that distance without wheels or boats. Less than 1 in 8 million. Mainstream science starts panicking because this implies a level of social organization and marine navigation that should not exist in the Neolithic period.
The Sarsens are found in abundance on a place called the Marlborough Downs, which is about 20 miles from Stonehenge. But until very recently, it was thought there were no Sarsens on Salisbury Plain at all, and archaeologists couldn't understand why Stonehenge wasn't built on the Marlborough Downs.
Here is where things get even crazier. In December 2025, archaeologists confirmed a massive ring of at least 16 prehistoric pits surrounding a site called Durrington Walls near Stonehenge. Each pit is 10 meters wide and 5 meters deep. The circle stretches over 2 kilometers across. It is the largest prehistoric structure ever found in Britain. For decades, scientists dismissed these as natural sinkholes. The latest research proves they were dug by humans over centuries. The pits form a perfect geometric pattern, a boundary that marks sacred territory. Think about what this means. These people were not just stacking rocks. They were surveying vast landscapes with precision that requires advanced measurement tools.
How do you think they knew the exact circumference of the Earth?
I think they were measuring. I think they had measurement. They had people going out to different latitudes, taking different measurements, using astronomy to do so, using shadows at certain times of the day and year.
But here is the catch. New acoustic research published in 2020 shows that when Stonehenge was complete, the sound inside lasted 0.6 seconds longer than it should. That is reverberation time, the same effect you get in a concert hall. Researchers built a 1/12th scale model and tested it with ultrasonic frequencies. They found that the stone circle block's external noise keeps internal sound trapped and creates echoes that focus at the center. Speech becomes 4 decibels louder. Music gets enriched with harmonic overtones. Scientists at the University of Salford said the acoustic design is so sophisticated it could not be accidental. Someone 5,000 years ago understood sound waves.
So this is pretty strange. I mean, that can't be proven, obviously, but the fact that the evidence is there with the measurements that are being found at these sites.
What nobody wants to admit is that the bluestones from Wales ring like bells when you strike them. Researchers from the Royal College of Art tested this in 2014. The stones produce metallic and wooden tones. Different spots on the same rock make different musical notes. These are called lithophones, or ringing rocks. The investigators believe the acoustic properties are why the builders hauled these specific stones 200 miles from the Preseli Hills in Wales. There were plenty of local rocks, but those rocks did not sing. Scientists found indentations on the bluestones showing where ancient people struck them repeatedly. The monument was not just a calendar or a temple, it was a musical instrument.
What we can see here are some early Bronze Age carvings. These are just two carvings of many that are on the stones at Stonehenge. Stonehenge was built in about 2500 BC, about 4,500 years ago, and these were carved onto the stones several hundred years later. These ones were discovered in 1953 by an archaeologist called Richard Atkinson.
Here is the deal. In 2024, researchers began tracking a rare event called the Major Lunar Standstill. This happens once every 18.6 years. The moon rises and sets at extreme positions on the horizon, way beyond where the sun ever reaches. 4 stones at Stonehenge, called the station stones, form a perfect rectangle. The long axis of that rectangle aligns exactly with the southernmost moonrise during the Major Lunar Standstill. Scientists from Oxford, Leicester, and Bournemouth universities confirmed this in observations through 2025. The alignment is so precise, it cannot be coincidence. The odds are astronomically small. These builders tracked an 18-year lunar cycle. They encoded it into the monument. This shatters the narrative that they were simple sun worshippers.
The sun is captured in that alignment of Stonehenge, okay? Question we'll come back to shortly, directly here, is there more astronomy involved in the layout of Stonehenge? And I think the answer is probably yes. Okay.
What most people do not realize is that Stonehenge also aligns with quarter-day sunrises and sunsets. These are dates in early February, early May, early August, and early November. Ancient farming cultures used these as calendar markers for planting and harvest. Researchers proved in 2024 that the station stone rectangle captures all 6 major celestial events: midsummer sunrise, midwinter sunset, major lunar standstill moonrise, major lunar standstill moonset, and both sets of quarter-day solar events. Think about the implications. You are looking at a monument that tracks the sun and the moon across multiple cycles. It functions as a computer for predicting eclipses and seasonal changes, 5,000 years before computers existed.
But humans must have been involved in moving it some way if there's no evidence of glacial action on the Salisbury Plain. And there's actually a lot of really good evidence that they moved it all the way from Scotland.
If we look at an overland route, prehistoric Britain, some say it was very heavily forested, like a temperate rainforest.
But here is where it gets even stranger. Researchers discovered that 56 pits called the Aubrey holes form a perfect circle around Stonehenge. In 2024, mathematicians proved you can draw a 56-sided polygon using only a compass and straightedge. The geometry is so elegant it requires knowledge of square root mathematics. Mainstream researchers refuse to publish this because it implies prehistoric people understood concepts that were supposedly invented in ancient Greece 2,000 years later. The monument encodes approximations for pi and the square root of 2. These are irrational numbers. You cannot write them as simple fractions, but somehow Neolithic farmers figured them out.
Thinking there are certain abstract concepts that these people don't even quite have the language to describe. Counting above like 30 is a challenge for these people. They're having to invent kind of in real time ways to do it. What was it like having to write characters who have that kind of mindset or way of looking at the world?
And get this, the geometry gets darker. Recent analysis shows the inner horseshoe of trilithons uses a sexagesimal system. That is base 60 math, the same system ancient Sumerians used. The outer Sarsen circle had 30 stones with 30 gaps, 60 total positions. Researchers confirmed in early 2025 that this allows for precise angular measurements. Every 6th position creates a familiar pattern like a clock face. The calculated angle for the solstice alignment is 80.82 degrees, almost exactly 81 degrees. You can draw that angle perfectly using a 60-point circle and basic chord geometry. The question nobody will ask is, how did Stone Age Britons and ancient Sumerians both develop identical mathematical systems?
The invention of writing, 2600 to 2700 BC in Egypt and Sumeria. The main building campaign of Stonehenge is going on at the same period of time. These two things are happening simultaneously. Is there any connection? I'm not going to say that there is. Just
what scientists whisper in private is that the acoustic pattern inside Stonehenge was designed for ritual, but not for humans outside. New research shows that if you stand at the center and speak, the sound reflects off the inner trilithon horseshoe. It acts like a megaphone projecting your voice toward the avenue entrance. But only people inside the circle hear the full effect. The outer sarsen stones block sound from escaping. Ancient observers outside would see lips moving, but hear nothing. Some researchers argue this created a sense of mystery. The priests or leaders inside communicated with forces that common people could not perceive. The acoustic design was social control.
What's the problem here? Obviously, some method of transport had to be utilized to get that stone 460 plus miles from the northern tip of Scotland down to the building site at Stonehenge, right? So, in this article, which appeared in Nature,
here is what mainstream science does not want you to know. The blue stones that ring like bells were arranged in a specific inner circle and horseshoe pattern. When struck in sequence, they produce different notes. Researchers mapped the tonal properties in 2014. They found that the stones create a musical scale, not random sounds, an actual sequence of pitches. Some theorists ask if Stonehenge was a giant xylophone, a place where ritual leaders performed sacred music that only initiates inside the circle could fully experience. The acoustic chamber would amplify and enrich those tones, creating an overwhelming sensory experience that reinforced belief in the supernatural.
Looks like weathering, but it's not. These are actually the marks of thousands and thousands of strikes with a stone hammer. And all of these were individually shaped, rounded off, completed by thousands of hours of craftsmen.
But here is the kicker. The latest findings about the altar stone from Scotland raise a darker theory. In December 2020, 4 researchers proposed that Stonehenge was a political monument designed to unify Britain. The stones came from all over the island. Blue stones from Wales, sarsen stones from 15 miles northeast, altar stone from Scotland, 750 kilometers away. Researchers at University College London argue the monument symbolized unity among different tribes and cultures. Building it required cooperation across vast distances. It was a message: we are one people. But the theory nobody will touch is what happened to those who refused to join. Stonehenge may have been built to mark the end of a war, a forced unification. The cremation burials found at the site all cluster in the southeast sector, near the lunar standstill alignment. Over 50 cremated remains. Some researchers believe these were sacrifices. People burned and buried to consecrate the monument during major lunar standstill events.
it blew our socks off when we discovered it was from Northeast Scotland. Yeah, okay, yeah. It was a shock, to say the least. Coming from that distance, more than 700 kilometers, was remarkable.
What most people do not realize is that the major lunar standstill only happens twice a month during the standstill season. From February 2024 to November 2025, the moon aligned with the station stones at different times of day and night. Ancient people would have tracked this, waited for the perfect moment. When the moon rose at its extreme southern point during a specific phase, maybe a full moon, the light would flood through the stones, creating dramatic shadows. Researchers confirmed in observations that the moonlight makes the blue stones glow. The sandstone surfaces catch and reflect lunar light in ways that do not happen with sunlight. This may be why they were chosen. The builders wanted stones that responded to the moon. Think about what this means for you right now. Stonehenge has been studied for 400 years. Only in the last 12 months have researchers confirmed the acoustic pattern, the geometric precision, and the lunar alignment. This is not ancient history. This is breaking news. Scientists are rewriting textbooks because the evidence no longer fits the story we were told. These were not primitive people. They had knowledge we are only now beginning to understand. Some of it we still cannot explain.
On one hand, they're telling me that it's some kind of alien crap. On the other hand, it's some way of these ancient druids who were able to look at the constellations and decipher things through these big, stones. Some say it's a religious thing.
Here is the deal. The sound pattern inside Stonehenge creates a frequency around 47 to 48 hertz. That is a low, rumbling hum. Researchers who tested a full-scale concrete replica in Washington state confirmed this. The stones resonate at that frequency when wind blows through them. Thomas Hardy wrote about it in 1891 in his novel Tess of the D'Urbervilles. He described a booming hum at Stonehenge that made water in puddles vibrate. Scientists dismissed this as fiction for over a century. The 2020 acoustic research proves Hardy was right. The monument hums. That frequency is just below the range of human hearing, but you feel it in your chest. Some researchers believe this was intentional. The builders designed Stonehenge to create a physical sensation, a vibration that made people inside feel the presence of something beyond normal perception. But here is where things get even crazier. The 60 markers around the outer circle correspond to a 60-day calendar system. Ancient cultures divided the year into 6 60-day periods. Researchers confirmed this pattern appears in monuments across Britain and Brittany.
Astronomical alignment. So we know that the orientation of the model of the structure was not just randomly placed. You had to have this all-important alignment, this axis to begin with. Once you've got that, it would only make sense that you would then use a very rational and specific...
The geometry suggests shared knowledge, a common understanding of time and space that spread across prehistoric Europe. The question is how? There was no writing, no central authority. Yet these monuments from Scotland to southern England to western France all use the same mathematical principles, the same astronomical alignments. Some researchers propose a lost teaching tradition, knowledge passed from generation to generation through oral instruction and ritual practice. Others ask if there was an earlier advanced culture that seeded this information before vanishing.
How do you get 200 people to leave their daily work and make a pilgrimage to this wood and spend time wrapping ropes around stones and dragging them across the landscape all the way to where you want to build a monument?
What nobody wants to admit is that we do not know who built Stonehenge. The monument evolved over 1,500 years, from 3100 BC to 1600 BC. Different groups added different elements. The earthwork and Aubrey holes came first, then timber posts, then bluestones, then the massive sarsen trilithons, then rearrangements of the bluestones. Each phase shows increasing sophistication. The final design with the acoustic chamber, the geometric precision and the lunar alignment represents the peak. But by 1600 BC Stonehenge was abandoned. The knowledge that built it disappeared. For 3,000 years it stood empty. A mystery that modern science is only now starting to decode. Here is what this means. Right now, as you read this, researchers are still inside Stonehenge measuring shadows and moonlight during the major lunar standstill season. The observations continue through 2025. They are discovering new patterns, new alignments, new acoustic effects that only appear during specific lunar and solar events. Every finding raises more questions. If these people understood sound waves and advanced geometry and multi-year astronomical cycles, what else did they know? And more importantly, where did that knowledge go? Why did it vanish? Was it suppressed? Was it lost in some catastrophe? Or did it transform into something we no longer recognize as connected to Stonehenge? The pattern at Stonehenge was not made for human ears outside the circle. It was designed for the chosen few who stood inside, who heard the amplified voices and felt the resonating hum and witnessed the moon align with stones brought from the edge of the known world. This was not a temple. It was a machine, a device for manipulating human perception through sound, light, and geometry. And the people who built it 5,000 years ago knew exactly what they were doing. What do you believe was the true purpose of the acoustic pattern at Stonehenge? Was it ritual? Was it control? Or was it something far stranger that we have not even begun to imagine?